Title: Beyond the Horizon. Chapter 1: The Ocean Between Us. The coastal town of South Haven was bathed in the golden light of a setting sun. Tourists strolled along the boardwalk, their laughter blending with the distant cry of seagulls and the rhythmic crash of waves against the shore. For years, this quiet beach town had been Olivia Harper's refuge, the place where she could lose herself in the sound of the ocean and the smell of salt in the air. It was the last place she'd expect to meet someone who would change her life forever. It was a quiet Tuesday afternoon when she first saw him. Olivia was sitting in her usual spot on the beach, her sketchbook resting on her knees, trying to capture the beauty of the horizon. The man was walking along the water's edge, his hands buried in the pockets of his jacket, his head down as if he was lost in thought. He had an air of quiet solitude about him, like he belonged to the sea. She watched as he stopped a few feet away, staring out at the water, oblivious to the world around him. For reasons she couldn't explain, Olivia found herself sketching him, capturing his posture, the way the wind tousled his hair, and the sadness that seemed to radiate from him. After a few minutes, the man turned and caught her gaze. Their eyes met, and for a moment, the world around them seemed to pause. Olivia quickly looked down at her sketchbook, embarrassed to be caught staring. When she glanced up again, he was walking toward her. "Are you drawing me?" His voice was deep, with a hint of amusement. Olivia felt her cheeks flush. I didn't mean to. I just thought you looked interesting." The man smiled, though there was a hint of sadness in his eyes. "Well, that's a first. Most people don't find me very interesting." He sat down beside her, uninvited but not unwelcome, and for a few moments, they sat in silence, watching the waves. "I'm Olivia," she finally said, glancing at him out of the corner of her eye. "Ethan," he replied, his gaze still fixed on the horizon. "What brings you to this little corner of the world?" "I could ask you the same thing," Olivia said, offering him a small smile. "But to answer your question, I live here. I moved to South Haven a few years ago, trying to escape the noise of the city." Ethan nodded, as if he understood perfectly. "I'm just passing through," he said quietly. "Trying to figure things out." There was something about the way he said it that made Olivia want to ask more, but she held back. She didn't know him, and yet, she felt a strange connection to him, as if they had crossed paths for a reason. Over the next few days, they continued to meet on the beach, sometimes talking, sometimes sitting in comfortable silence. Ethan told her bits and pieces about his life. He was from Boston, had worked as a marine biologist, and was now on an extended leave of absence. He didn't go into details, but Olivia could sense there was more to his story, something painful he wasn't ready to share. Olivia, in turn, shared her love for art and how she had come to South Haven after a difficult breakup. The town had become her sanctuary, a place where she could find herself again. One evening, as they watched the sun dip below the horizon, Olivia turned to Ethan. "You're leaving soon, aren't you?" Ethan nodded, a shadow crossing his face. "I have to. But I don't want to." Olivia's heart sank at his words. She had known from the beginning that their time together was limited, but the thought of him leaving still filled her with a deep sense of loss. "I've never felt this way about anyone," Ethan admitted, his voice low. "But I don't know if I'm ready for anything more." Olivia understood. They were both broken in their own ways, still healing from past wounds. But knowing that didn't make the impending goodbye any easier. Chapter 2: Waves of Change. The night before Ethan was set to leave South Haven, Olivia found herself unable to sleep. She lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, replaying their conversations in her mind. There was something about Ethan that had touched her deeply, something about his quiet sadness that mirrored her own. She didn't want to lose him, but she also knew that asking him to stay would be selfish. The next morning, she went to the beach, hoping to find him one last time. The sky was overcast, the air thick with the promise of rain. When she arrived at their usual spot, she saw him standing by the water, his back to her, as if he was already saying his goodbyes. Olivia approached him slowly, her heart heavy with the weight of what was unsaid. "Are you really going to leave without saying goodbye?" she asked softly. Ethan turned to her, his expression conflicted. I don't want to say goodbye, Olivia. But I can't stay. Olivia nodded, her throat tight. I know. But that doesn't mean it hurts any less. They stood there in silence, the wind whipping through their hair, the waves crashing against the shore. Finally, Ethan stepped closer, reaching out to take her hand. I wish things were different, he whispered. But I need to figure out who I am before I can be with anyone. Olivia blinked back tears, understanding his need for space, but hating the thought of losing him. She squeezed his hand, willing herself to be strong. I hope you find what you're looking for, she said, her voice barely above a whisper. Ethan leaned in, pressing a soft kiss to her forehead before stepping back. I'll never forget you, Olivia. And with that, he turned and walked away, leaving Olivia standing alone on the beach, the sound of the waves echoing in her ears like the memory of a dream. Chapter 3: The Long Winter. Winter came to South Haven, bringing with it a biting cold and a loneliness that settled deep into Olivia's bones. She tried to focus on her art, throwing herself into her sketches and paintings, but her thoughts kept drifting back to Ethan. She wondered where he was, if he had found the peace he was searching for. She wondered if he ever thought about her. She tried to move on, to forget him, but it was impossible. Their brief time together had left an indelible mark on her heart, one that wouldn't fade no matter how much time passed. Months went by, and with each passing day, Olivia began to accept that Ethan was gone for good. He had been a fleeting moment in her life, a reminder of what could have been. But as much as it hurt, she knew she had to let go. It wasn't until the first signs of spring appeared that Olivia began to feel like herself again. The days grew longer, the sun warmer, and slowly, she found herself smiling again. She spent more time at the beach, sketching the waves and the seagulls, finding comfort in the familiar rhythm of the ocean. But no matter how much she tried to move forward, there was always a part of her that longed for Ethan. She had fallen for him in a way she hadn't expected, and the ache of his absence was something she couldn't ignore. One afternoon, as she sat on the beach, lost in thought, she heard a familiar voice behind her. Olivia. She turned, her heart pounding in her chest, and there he was, Ethan, standing a few feet away, his hair tousled by the wind, his eyes filled with the same sadness she had seen months ago. For a moment, they just stared at each other, both too overwhelmed to speak. Then, slowly, Ethan stepped forward, his gaze never leaving hers. I came back, he said, his voice barely above a whisper. Olivia felt tears welling up in her eyes, but she didn't move, too afraid that if she did, he would disappear again. Why? She finally asked, her voice trembling. Ethan took another step closer, his expression pained. Because I couldn't stop thinking about you. I thought I needed to be alone, but the truth is, I was running. I was running from what I felt for you. Olivia shook her head, tears spilling down her cheeks. You left me, Ethan. You didn't even give us a chance. I know, Ethan said, his voice breaking. And I'm sorry. But I've realized that the only way I can move forward is with you. Olivia stared at him, her heart torn between the love she still felt for him and the pain of his leaving. She wanted to believe him, but she was scared that he would leave again, that he would hurt her all over. I don't know if I can do this, she whispered. Ethan stepped closer, taking her hands in his. I'm not asking you to forgive me right away. I just want a chance. A chance to prove that I'm not going anywhere this time. For a long moment, Olivia said nothing, her emotions swirling inside her like the stormy sea. But as she looked into Ethan's eyes, she saw the truth in his words, the sincerity, the regret, and the love he had tried so hard to deny. And slowly, she nodded. I'll give you a chance, she said softly. But don't make me regret it. Ethan smiled, relief flooding his features. I won't. Chapter 4: A New Beginning. The days that followed were filled with cautious optimism. Ethan stayed in South Haven, and though things between them weren't easy at first, they slowly began to rebuild what they had lost. There were moments of doubt, moments when Olivia wondered if she had made the right decision, but with each passing day, she saw how much Ethan had changed. He was more open now, more willing to talk about his past, about the things that had haunted him for so long. And Olivia, in turn, began to trust him again, letting herself believe that this time, things could be different. One evening, as they sat together on the beach, watching the sun dip below the horizon, Ethan turned to her, his expression serious. "I don't want to leave again, Olivia," he said quietly. "I want to stay here, with you." Olivia's heart swelled at his words, but she couldn't help the fear that still lingered in the back of her mind. "What if you get restless again?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Ethan shook his head, his gaze steady. "I won't. I've found what I was looking for, Olivia. It's you. It's always been you." Tears filled her eyes as she looked at him, and for the first time in a long time, she felt truly at peace. The ocean stretched out before them, vast and endless, but for the first time, it didn't feel like something that separated them. It felt like something that connected them, something that would always be there, no matter where life took them. And as the sun set on the horizon, Olivia leaned into Ethan's arms, finally letting go of the fear, the doubt, and the pain. Because she knew now that no matter what happened, they would face it together.